Edgar Cayce's Jesus the Pattern and Christ Consciousness. Compiled by Catherine C. Arnaud. Part 5. 1928-1930. As seen, in the application and study and teaching to others of that relationship of good for something, occult in its application, mystic in its understanding, and art as a whole. For these are the essence of art. Study first to keep self unspotted from the world. Keep him, who gave himself. In that he became the artist, and the figure for good, and good for something, becoming all things unto all men, that many, may understand. Are the present intimate girl of friends the right influence? Some are not. Be governed by that one and those who have trained, who have counseled well with the entity as respecting these. Then weigh same in the balance of the ideal held by self, and make decision for self, for out of little things do great conditions, and associations and relations grow. Harbor not that in any manner, that would eventually bring to self even discontent, and, most of all, the discouragement of self's abilities. Do not lose faith in self, but not pampered, but tutored in that way as is known in self as towards the ideal as was set by him, in that, though he were the Father, yet in the Son, came that relationship with man and woman that exalted, honored, glorified, womanhood. In entering we find the entity coming under the influence of Mercury, Jupiter, Venus, and Uranus. Hence we find one, irrespective of will's influence in the life, of high-minded, high-ennobling influence. Yet love dominating every act as related to the self in relations to others, and yet reason carrying with same that of the necessity. To the entity's own development. Of being something that must accompany even the highest motives or intent that may be experienced by each and every individual, would they give of the best to themselves or to others. In this respect we find the entity above that of others in the normal manner, for when duty, love, reason are one, then such consciousness approaches near that of universal love that gave all that man might be one with that universal love. Yes, we find the body here. In prayer. In giving the physical conditions then as respecting this body, they may be treated in an entirely different manner from that as may be given concerning many an individual. Few there be that bear their burdens with such compassion, knowing that in the fullness of time the great healer may so make himself conscious in the vitals even of the physical organs as to take the place of those conditions as have undue trouble, and torment the body physical. Be of good cheer, for I will stand in the stead of him who puts his trust in me, hath said the Lord. And he is able, and willing, and anxious to do that for those who love the coming of the consciousness of self's being emerged, ruled, controlled, by his Spirit. Keep that thou hast kept in thine heart, and make this manifest in the life. In the actions of the body, mental and physical, will come the consciousness of this indwelling sufficient to take away those conditions that have been as those crosses that all must bear in some form. That they too may know that God is in his holy temple and is approached through his Son, who gave to man the divine access to that throne room, in that he, as man, suffered in the body and in the self, being lost in service gave himself in that manner the ransom for those that would come, in meekness of heart, knowing that that asked for in his name is done already, even as the heart of self is in accord with that asked for self and others. Unto others, then, in the action, comes the consciousness of that as is gained through belief in his name. Keep constant, then, in prayer, in supplication, and in believing, and acting as if that sought is done already. Physical conditions often exist in the body wherein there is given to many those of offices, to perform to and for others, that they may understand, that not only he that believes, but he that would perform a service for another must also believe. Keep, then, the body cleansed in thought, in deed, in the diet, and the eliminations, as is ever made manifest in this material, mental, this physical world. and so conduct the thoughts towards others as to radiate that is being received, and the conditions will become as naught. We are through. In the present abilities of the entity, these are varied, and the entity will find most of self's interest centering in barter and sale. Yet in the tenets of him he followed, in the lessons of him he praised, in the meditation of him who prayed, in the thought of him whom he gave the feast for, may the entity find those greater blessings in the understanding of associates of thine own house, of thine own kindred, of thine own peoples. And in living the well-rounded life, finding that self may be used in what the hand finds to do, and do it with thy might. In meditation the entity will gain much. Not so much as what is ordinarily termed psychic, but rather of the awakening of self's own experiences through the many periods in the earth, and the lessons lost or gained there. These, applied in the present experience, especially with that builded in love, will bring the glory of the life well lived, and the blessings from those who contact or know the entity best. I have had several experiences which impressed me as coming from possibly the master. One some time ago relative to the pistol being fired at me, and I endeavored to stop the bullet in its flight. I imagined myself successful. This in an emblematical manner for the study of self. For, as is seen that, there will come. With the full realization of those ideals the self retains within self respecting the association of self with those forces, those manifestations in the master's forces, as come. That the forces of nature, as understood by individuals, will become subservient unto the forces in self, even as was, in the ability of self, to forego any destructive elements in the firing of the weapons. For, as has been given, he that abideth in me, I will abide in him. He that asketh anything in my name, believing, shall have same. Greater things than ye have seen me do, ye shall do, if ye abide in me. In endeavoring to abide in you, which is always my thought, is there any counsel to me? Let that mind be in you as was and is ever in me. Not my will, but thy will, Lord. And know this, that there abides this, as may be made manifest in thee. That there is the spiritual body, there is the mental body, there is the physical body. We three are one, even as the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. As we abide in thee, and through the various elements, the various attributes of each, they manifest in and through the various forces or bodies in thee. When doubts arise, when the mental disturbed, when the subconscious even all afflury. Just call on that inmost superconsciousness of my presence with thee. How can I call this presence? Making thy will one with the Father, and in the silence. Just the moment. Just the seeking. Just the giving of self wholly into the use of that desire to know the guidance of that will. My cigarette experience, both physical and mental. Can that be explained? Only in form. For to self each represents the various forms of a physical, a mental, a spiritual being, her body, and its attributes. In the cigarette, and that is experience comes the manifestation of the correlation of that between the mental forces in its triune, as of the physical, of the subconscious, of the spiritual or superconscious force. Would I, then, do well to stop smoking? That lies within self. That brings often the ability to attune self through that, as of the habit, for, as has been given, the physical is of the material. The mental or habit forming is of the subconscious, and oft through the subconscious only may the superconscious be brought into being. Control the habit, and let not the habit control self. My feeling regarding the financial affairs, and all those connected dependent on this financial affair. Is my liberal and optimistic viewpoint correct? Correct, so long as they abide, in that brings for that purposefulness as is seen in thine own self. For, as it has been given, there lies within self that ability, that consciousness of purpose, for the self to become one, that may wield a greater influence in the financial affairs of the world than of any one individual now in the earth's plane. That's optimism. Is that purpose being properly carried on to the proper goal at present? Being carried on. Keep thine self in attunement, or keep the mental and the spiritual in such an accord that attunement may be kept, or had in a moment, with that as has just been promised thee, when abide in me, and I will abide in thee. May it be known to me who gave those words. Those words came from thine own, from thine brother, from the Master. Why is it that at times I seem to lose the ability of attunement, such as example when I try to gain things myself or follow Mrs. 3734. Telephone operator who has recently developed psychic sensitivity. See Gladys Davis's note under 900-461 reports. In faith one seeks, and in self alone may the full knowledge and full understanding come. Trust not in powers made with hands, but rather in that builded in the life of him able to keep that committed unto him. Faltering is only a proof of the abilities. For who would gain heaven and the whole of the knowledge of same, must know there are the opposites, or away from. Trust in that given thee, and in use of that given, understanding comes. See 137-128, and regarding wrong information through Mrs. 3734. In times of turmoil, I seem to always fall back on that promise given by you to me through these lips. Ever will that abide with thee. Stop and turn within, step aside, or even in the throng turn within. And gain for self the answer there, lo, I am with you always. If ye love me, keep my commandments. For my yoke is easy, my burden is light. For in my Father's house are many mansions, and they that abide in me possess all that may be used even in this material plane, will they but abide in the Father. Edward Blumenthal. I have certain thoughts regarding the associations, environments and condition. Can you give me counsel of those? In the interior forces of self, there is seen that no higher counsel may be had than that as may be gained by self, through that attunement of self to that power. Heed none other. Let no conflict of any nature separate thine self from that ability to attune self with him, and in counsel of every character he will guide, whether it be of those that pertain to material, mental or spiritual. He was in the flesh thine brother. Reading 1374 gave earlier incarnation as Jude, brother of Jesus. In those as builded innately, we find one that is in that position of making friends easily, and just as easily losing same. Yet there are friendships made that make for the better understanding in the experience, and in those of Venus forces comes the love that is innate in the experience of the entity. Through all the vicissitudes of life this remaineth, for the entity has gained much that makes for that as was given. There is a friend that sticketh closer than a brother, and he that is just kind to the least of these, my little ones, is greater than he that hath taken a mighty city. These building, these kept within the consciousness of the entity, will build to that Christ consciousness as makes all free. For in him is the life, and he is the light that shineth into the dark places, even to the recesses of that of his own consciousness, that makes for that which casteth out fear. For being afraid is the first consciousness of sins entering in, for he that is made afraid has lost consciousness of self's own heritage with the Son, for we are heirs through him to that kingdom, that is beyond all that would make afraid, or that would cause a doubt in the heart of any. Through the recesses of the heart, then, search out that would make afraid, casting out fear, and he alone may guide. In the abilities of the entity in the present, as given, these may be made to excel. And the entity may so apply those tenets as have been set before self, in its ministration to those that are about the entity, that no return would be necessary in this experience or plane. For in him is the light, and the light came among men, showing men the way, to find that consciousness in self. For the kingdom is of within, and when self is made one with those forces there may be the accord as is necessary for come up higher. Being faithful over a few things, I will make thee ruler over many. How can the entity best develop her personality? Holding the consciousness of the Master in front of self, acting in that way and manner in which he would act under every and all circumstances.